There are three main types of curtain walls in Revit. If you go to the Architecture tab and click on the Wall tool and go to the drop-down menu in the Properties dialog box, you'll find the three main types. You have a curtain wall, exterior glazing, and storefront. Before we get into the differences between those three in Revit, let's take a look at what they are in the real world. Here you can see the two main types of walls that are made out of glass: a curtain wall and a storefront. A curtain wall is usually one that you find in a high-rise building, where the wall made out of glass extends past all of the floor levels or the structure of the building, and they are attached to the structure of the building. They do not support themselves, but yet rely on the structure of the building to hold them up. In contrast to that, a storefront is self-supporting and is usually found on low-rise buildings, 1 or 2 stories tall, and support themselves between the roof and the floor. Here you can see some examples of curtain walls. Here's a good example showing the glass wall spanning 3 floors, and you can see, if you look closely, that it is attached to the floor level and the roof level at the top, and it spans from in this case, the second floor up to the roof, and it is attached to the structure. A storefront that you can see here, you can see that they're usually 2 stories tall at the most, and they support themselves and are what you mainly think of as a storefront window. In Revit, however, the 3 types of curtain walls are a bit different than what we think of in the real world. Let's take a look. We have a curtain wall, exterior glazing, and storefront. I'm in the floor plan level 1, and I will create a curtain wall. If I go to 3D view and shade the view, you can see that it is basically a wall made out of glass. If I highlight that wall and change it to exterior glazing, you can see that grid lines are now introduced into the big plane of glass. And then the last wall type, the storefront, applies mullions to those grids. A mullion is the frame that holds the piece of glass in the wall of glass. There are 3 main ways to create a curtain wall in Revit. One we just saw, where you either create a wall or change a wall type to a curtain wall. Let's take a look at it again quickly. If I go to level 1, I can go to my wall tool on the Architecture tab, Build Panel, select Curtain Wall, left click, drag, and left click, and I have a curtain wall. Again, I'll go to 3D view, and there it is. I could have also created a different type of wall, any kind of wall. Go to 3D view, select the wall, and just change the type of wall to a curtain wall. The second way to create a curtain wall is by lines. This is helpful when you have a floor level or a roof level that you want to align the curtain wall to. Let's create a floor. I'm going to create 2 floors, one on the first level and one on the second level. Here you can see the one I just made down below on the first level. You can see over here that I am on the second level. So I'll create another floor that is almost identical to the first floor, but instead of the front edge being straight, I'll go ahead and make it curved. And we'll look at that in 3D. And there's our 2 floors. So again, we can go to our Architecture tab, Build Panel, Wall Tool, and select Curtain Wall. Here are the different tools I can create the wall or the curtain wall from. So we'll go ahead and pick lines, and that allows us to pick any line to create a curtain wall. In this instance, we'll pick the front edge that is curved from the second floor. Now you can see that it is straight. To go ahead and make this curved, we'll have to add grids so it can become faceted and follow the curve more closely. The curtain grids are found on the Architecture tab, Build panel, and they are right here, Curtain Grid. So if we select that tool, we can come in and start adding grids, and as we do, you can see that the curtain wall will now become faceted and follow the curve more closely. The more we add, the closer it gets to following the curve. And the last way to create a curtain wall is by face. This we'll learn a little bit more when we learn about massing. But let's create a mass quickly and show you what a curtain wall by face is. So we'll go ahead and make another square at the level 1, and we'll do another one on level 2. We're creating a mass right now. If we go into 3D view, you can see the two planes that we're going to create a mass from. And we'll learn about massing later in the semester. But for now, we'll select those two and create a form, a solid form, and you can see the mass. Now let's go ahead and stretch this mass so we can create a curtain wall on one of the faces. To make it a little more interesting, we can twist and pull the mass and have a curtain wall follow one of these faces. So we'll finish the mass and we'll go to Architecture. Instead of creating a wall for this curtain wall, we'll create a curtain system. We'll select a face that we want the curtain system to be applied to, and then we'll create the system. And you can see that the curtain wall is along that face. You can see it is not following the curves, these complex curves, very closely. And again, that's because the squares or the divisions of this curtain wall are not small enough. So again, we can come in and add grids to make it follow that complex curve more closely. And as we add them, you can see, if I zoom in, that it now is following it more closely. Let's take a look at the storefront and the exterior glazing wall tools in Revit. We'll go back to level 1, wall tool, and this time we'll pick exterior glazing. We'll draw it, go to our 3D view. I always recommend doing, when working in curtain walls in Revit, by using a shaded view so you can tell what is glass and what is not. Otherwise, if it's just a hidden line view, you're not so sure if this is made out of glass or not. But when you're shaded, the blue gives you an indication of where the glass is. As you can see, we picked the exterior glazing, and this comes with grids. If I hover over one of the grids, you can see the dashed line. You'll need to create grids first before you can apply the mullions. Again, the mullions are the frames that hold the pieces of glass inside the wall. I just added a mullion there. I'll show you again. If you go to the Architecture tab, we're still on the Build panel, and this time we're going to pick mullions. Once you pick the mullion, over in the properties, you can pick different types and just select which grids you want to turn that mullion to. You can see that these are circular. And that is how you apply mullions to the grids that came with the exterior glazing tool. And the last one is the storefront. Let's go back to level 1, Architecture, Wall, and we'll go down to Storefront, draw a storefront, look at it in 3D, and you can see that the storefront comes with grids and mullions already attached. The benefit of this is if you have a storefront or you have a need to create a storefront that has a regular pattern of mullions, the storefront tool allows you to create a glazed wall with a pattern already applied with the grids and the mullions already there. You can highlight this entire wall by selecting one of the outside edges, and you can go to its type and change the spacing. Maybe you want 4 foot between the vertical and the horizontal grids, and it will update automatically. And that is much quicker than having to try to add grids to a curtain wall and then apply the mullions to that. Let's take a look at how to add a door or a curtain door inside of this wall. To do so, we need to make sure that the panel, what we're going to do is we're going to change the panel into a door. So we need to make sure that the panel, in this case, we'll pick this panel here. We'll make these two panels one panel and turn that panel into a door. So the first thing we'll need to do is delete the mullion. So we'll have to select it and unpin the mullion and delete it. And we'll do the same thing for the one down below. Again, don't forget that you have to unpin the mullion and then you can delete it. You can see that it is still 2 pieces of glass. To make this one piece, we'll need to select the grid that divides these two and get rid of the grid that is just in this portion. So we can select the grid here, and we can add and remove a segment here. Since the grid exists, when we select this, Revit knows that we want to remove this segment here. And when we select it, you can see that it is now one panel. If I hover near the border of this panel and hit Tab, and then I left click, you can see that I can pick it. I'm going to unpin that. Right now, with this selected, this panel selected, I could change this to many things. I could change it to a solid panel. I'm going to select it again here. And again, it's just like a wall. Once I select it, I can pick from the drop-down menu and change it to any of my wall types. I can change it to a brick. By hovering near the edge of the new wall type and hitting Tab, I can cycle through the selections, and I'll look down here until it shows that I will select the wall type when I left click. So again, I'll hover near the border, I'm going to hit Tab, and as I continue to hit Tab, you can see down on the left corner that it keeps changing until I get to the wall type. Make sure you're on the border. There we go. And then I can change this back to a glazed panel. I can even make it an empty panel if I want. And even though there's no glass there, I can still select the empty panel and change it back to glazed. To create a door, I'll do the same thing. I'll need to select that panel. But before I can do that, I'll need to load a door, a curtain door, into my project. Now, you don't go to the Architecture tab, Door tool. To load a curtain wall door, you actually need to go to the Insert tab, and over on the end is Load from Library, and you'll load Family. Once you go there, you can select from the door menu, the door folder, a single glass door. Make sure it says curtain wall at the front. There are 3 types you can choose from: a double glass, a double storefront, or single, and we'll go with the single. Once we hit open, it's loaded into the project. I'm going to hit escape a couple times, go back to my panel, select my panel, And now at the drop-down menu, you can see that the door, curtain wall, single glass type has been added. The last thing for curtain walls that we'll take a look at is the justification of the spacing for the storefront walls. Let's go ahead and delete this wall. We'll go back to level 1. And we'll create another storefront wall. And we'll take a look at that on the south elevation. When we highlight the border of this curtain wall, we'll select the entire wall. And we can edit the type. And we can see that we had changed it to 4 feet for the vertical grids and 4 feet for the horizontal grids. Let's go ahead and change the horizontal grids to 10 feet. And you can see that the curtain wall is now divided by a horizontal mullion 10 feet up. The wall is 20 feet, so this mullion's right in the middle. So now let's take a look at the vertical mullions of this wall. Revit has added several options, 4 different options, in the type properties of this curtain wall to assist in manipulating the layout of these mullions. This is for the horizontal or vertical, but in this instance, we're just going to look at the vertical and how it changes. We're going to highlight the border of the curtain wall so we select the entire thing, and we'll go to the type properties. Under the vertical grid layout, you can see the layout, the very first option. There are 4 different or 5 different ways you can manipulate this. One is none, but the other 4 are fixed distance, fixed number, maximum spacing, and minimum spacing. Right now you can see that it is set to maximum spacing. I'm going to cancel out of this and add some dimensions so we can see what is happening as we change these. I'm going to go ahead and dimension to all the grid lines. Now remember, we set these grids to be 4 feet apart. But the dimension shows something that is less than 4 feet. I'm going to highlight the wall again and go to the type properties. The maximum spacing option here is telling us that Revit will divide this wall, or the vertical mullions of this wall, up to 4 feet without going over. If I change this option to a fixed distance and hit OK, you can see that Revit has changed these vertical mullions to actually land at 4 feet on center. I'm going to highlight the wall again, go to the type properties, and this time I'm going to say or select fixed number. Hit OK, and it changed again to this 3 foot 10 5/8 of an inch. The difference here is if I drag the wall and make it shorter, the number of panels stayed the same, and you can see that the panels got smaller. They are now 2 feet 10 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to undo that, go back to that, select my wall again, go to the type properties, and the last one is minimum spacing. In contrast to maximum spacing, minimum spacing is as close to the defined 4 feet, but it can go over a little bit. And you can see that it keeps it close to 4 feet, but this option allows Revit to place these vertical mullions just over 4 feet.